up with 70.
Wow. Of that.
Boop, boop.
That one.
Ah.
Oh, I dropped one out. What is that? Ooh, one's black
Ooh.
bullet.
Yeah.
You put that one back in.
This is the Mac Crosswires. This is that kind of reddish one.
Mac Crosswires.
It's made by Mac, but the name of it is
Oh.
Crosswires. You got your wires crossed. Wearing that hat, you do. I feel like you're totally taking over this whole segment because you're all fashionista over here.
Wow.
The heck, man?
Well, you're fashioning up with the, what is it, Mac Attack or whatever the hell it is.
The Mac Cross. I'm trying to pull up my.
Crosswire, that's
Yeah.
it.
I pulled up Australian Day. Ay, ay, ay.
On that.
I'm trying to pull up national days.
You're behind, huh?
I don't. Well, I wasn't. And then shut up. That cowboy hat, man, it's throwing me off. Now my thing won't load. Oh, there we go. Last day in August too. Are you ready for September?
Ready, whether you are or not, it's coming. Labor Day's this weekend.
I can only pick one.
What?
1 out of 4.
One.
Let's go with National Trail Mix Day. Why not?
National Trail Mix Day.
Yeah.
Well,
Also
that's kind of goes with the
Matchmakers Day, too. I'm gonna throw it in
happy trails to you.
But tomorrow is going to be, and I don't know what this means, National Chicken Boys Day. Chicken Boys Day.
Does that mean chicken boys as in scared or?
Chicken like bark bark. Chicken.
Yeah. Like your chicken.
I don't know. Chicken Boy stands 22 feet tall and holds a bucket of chicken. It's a fiberglass statue. What does that mean? I don't know.
You're the one on this stuff, not me.
Well, I'm just naming them out because I find them fascinating that every day has like 20 different meanings.
Yes, that's stupid.
It takes away from the day.
Yes.
Like August 14th, Stephanie's Day. It's the only day anyone really needs to remember.
I thought that was every day.
What are you doing over there? It is every day. But, you know.
When are we going to, are we on?
Nope.
Oh.
And that's Make It With Stephanie.
Crosswired. There's that funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday, live at 5 on Newswire and Facebook.
We're not to that far yet.
On you were ready to go.
I was.
On a
Magnificent Monday.
On that. I figured I'd let you pick the one on whatever. I mean, sometimes the panic that goes on here before the show on what goes on is absolutely fascinating. Yes, the little things that people, to me, it's kind of unusual because I don't sweat the small stuff of that. I mean, it's
I don't sweat your intro. I just don't know what we're saying.
It's like it changes a whole heck of a
I know.
lot on that. No, it's funny of that how different people react to different things. But as you notice today, this is the first time. Most of the cowboy hats I wear are very cheap ones, like from the 99-cent store or whatever
Really?
that I do. Yes.
Well, you shouldn't give away your secret.
This is the first time I wore a very expensive hat, and it has a very good story, I think, behind it. This is a Stetson, which are
Dig the feather.
yes. So turn on side of the feather. Does that show it on there?
Oh,
Of that,
it's falling.
I guess I could take it off and show the feather there.
Yeah, there you go.
See that makes it show better instead
What
of.
kind of feather is it?
Well, now you're asking me. Ask me a question
Okay,
I can
all right.
answer.
Anyways.
But anyway, Stetson hats are made in Texas. They're a very high quality, expensive hat. my great-grandfather bought this, I think, in 1964, and he rode in. He was a big horseman, lived in Norco, horse country, USA, yada yada yada, and he rode in the annual 4th of July parade that we had down Sunnymead Boulevard every year. Well, 64, I was probably 3 years old. Well, I'm sitting in there, and I wanted the hat because I seen him riding it. I guess I don't even remember this. So my great-grandfather gives the hat to my dad. And he's had it, I don't know, for whatever this has been, 50 some odd years. And he walks in, 3 or 4 months ago and says, here's the hat your grandfather wore on that and you were excited about and you wanted as a kid. So he kept it all this time of that. But what I say is, even though you might not think of something, you might think the situation bad, and God knows all the stuff we're going through right now. But if you're patient and you wait long enough, or you don't sweat the small stuff, eventually you'll find, at least I have, that you'll get things will come to you. Things will work out all right if you don't panic. That's why I kind of chuckled about the panic. If you don't panic,
Panic all the time.
yes, of that. But it's like that. I mean, I was a little kid. Hey, neat little hat. Da, da, da. I had no idea it was a Stetson hat or very expensive hat. And hell, he probably paid, even back in 64, he probably paid $50, $60, $70 because, I mean, Stetson hats go like for $2, $3, $4, $5, up to a couple grand, I think.
Really?
They're very expensive. Yes, they're very high quality hat of that. But hell, I didn't, I just probably maybe I like the feather. Who knows? Or
Probably.
I like the band. I think the band is pretty neat on it myself in this day and age.
I'm digging the feather, though.
You like the feather?
I do. But I wonder what kind of feather it is. Sorry.
Of that. No, it's a cool thing. I thought it was really cool when my dad walked in and he said, "You know what this is?" Yeah, it's a Stetson hat. Then he told me the story about it, which I didn't remember from back in the day, but I thought that was pretty cool in that. So
cute story.
Yes,
I dig it.
and hopefully it will. Keep that in mind as we're going through all the madness we seem to, the extraordinary madness we seem to, most all of us seem to be going through each and every day here on that. But another lighter thing that I thought, a couple things I thought I'd bring up. Announcers, when they're in doing the play-by-play and stuff, sometimes they say some, odd things going on about that. So I was watching the Sprint Car Showdown at Petaluma Speedway, which is up in Northern California. About 5 or so miles in from San Francisco. It's actually right on the bay as the water comes in, about 3 or 4 miles from the San Francisco Bay, and it's a badass little racetrack because it's got black gumbo clay. It stays wet and fast all night. It's one of those spurs on, cowboy up, hammer down type racetracks. It's fast on that. But they were racing. This was during the 600 micro midget feature, and they were going. I'm surprising me how fast those little cars go now. But a father and daughter were out there racing. They're running about 4th or 5th or 6th or something in there, but they're running. So the daughter's ahead at this point, and it's getting towards the end of the race. So this is, and I forgot to get the name of the announcer, Petaluma, but I will get it here someday. But this is what he says at that as the father is approaching, getting ready, and he eventually does pass his daughter a couple laps later. But here we go. This is what he said.
4th is Carol Mendenhall. 5th is Savannah Brown. Father Rob Brown got to be smiling ear to ear behind his daughter as she's having the best run of her life. She's 5th. Rob Brown up on the rear end of daughter Savannah. Meanwhile,
I mean, it's a phrase that he uses when somebody's close or somebody's coming on there. He says, because I've listened to him before. He says, "Oh, John James is up the rear end of
Right.
Fred Crow or something." But to say that is Rob Brown is up the and he paused there. That's what was kind of weird about that. Is he paused like maybe he thought it was odd, but that's like his saying of that, and he went ahead and went with it anyway. But I mean, that's just kind of
right.
I mean, I said, man,
He's probably trying to think of something else. To
yes,
say,
and
was
I think that
I know this is gonna be bad, but went with it anyway.
yeah, and he rolled
I
with
do it
it
all the time.
anyway, which I thought was I mean, I'm thinking, man, that just did not sound right when I heard it, of that. But yeah, that's what I thought when I heard it because. Well, when I heard it and then I went back and replayed it and caught the pause in there, it's like he's thinking, I really shouldn't say that. But like you said, he went ahead and said it anyway on that deal. It's just one of those pause that come through on that you're doing when you're doing live TV or live radio in this condition. You say some unusual things on that, and once the tape's rolling, you can't unwind it.
Well, you can't. Well, are they on a delay? No, huh? Probably
No, not. I don't know that they are because that's Flow Racing is where it was on. But I mean that they're just picking up the live feed
Right.
from the track, and they're using the in that case they're using the track announcer at Petaluma. So I don't know if they had a delay, but probably somebody didn't. Even if it's a delay on the Flow Racing end, I imagine they didn't have, they probably, because it wasn't a bad word or anything,
Right.
It probably didn't flag anything for what was going on. But here's another one that goes on that was kind of funny, and that we'll get to a couple of these, and we'll get into the serious stuff.
Do we have to?
Yeah. So 3-year-old girl dangles in midair after getting swept away by a kite. So this, here we go.
Oh my God.
This is at a kite festival, and yeah, I guess the kite picks up. And I don't know if she's on the tail of the kite, which is awful long.
Well, she's got to be stuck because look how long they're messing with the cord.
Right. But that ribbon, or what she was hung to, let's replay it again. That does not look like a kite, per se.
No, but I mean define kite. Look at there's like a little astronaut right there.
I wondered if that was a kite or this was a tail or something hanging off of it. And, it might have hooked her or something. I don't know. It doesn't.
They're probably just classifying it as a kite when it's not like a traditional kite. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. It was in Taiwan, so we couldn't do that. But, yeah, could you imagine being at a kite festival like that or something, and then all of a sudden you're flying, 20, 30, 40 feet in the air?
I mean, at least you don't have to get tickets to ride the ride.
Yeah, there's an e-ticket ride if you're an old timer and went to Disneyland with that.
How scary though.
You probably don't know what an e-ticket ride means.
I think you should explain it to all our viewers out there, just in case they don't know. I don't want to sound like I know everything.
Why did you
I like
sound
you
like you know something?
What does it mean?
E-ticket. Well, back in Disneyland, they used to buy. It was like $5. You got so many A, B, C, D, and E tickets. The A tickets were like the teacups or something. The E tickets were like the Matterhorn. Your more popular rides. So you might add 5 E tickets. Usually, I think you had like five E's and D's, and then you had
that just sounds confusing.
Like 10 or so A, B, and C. So, like, the Tiki Room might have been a C.
It's the Tiki Room.
Oh, my.
Is it at Disneyland? Was it at one point?
Yeah, it was.
It's
I don't know if it's
anymore.
still there, but that was one of the...
Apparently
Oh,
not.
no, that was I always loved the Tiki Room. That was cool.
What is it?
Oh, well, I'll have to get some video of it. If it's not there, we'll have to get some video
it's
to
not.
it. It's
Not
hard
that
to...
I know of. I don't know.
It would be better to show it on a video than explain it.
Okay.
on that. But no, that's e-ticket ride were always the big ones. Like the Matterhorn or. And I think they might have had that one, Space Mountain, or any of the.
Excuse me for not living in the dinosaur era.
Yes.
And knowing what e-ticket was. Just kidding.
No, you're not.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Of that. No, here's another short one, but up in Lake Tahoe, the Safeway grocery store had a very interesting visitor. There is a nice brown bear grabbing his meal. Yes, of the deal on that. We'll play her again since it's a short one. Very healthy bear because he's in the produce section.
There you go.
It looks like he's grabbing an avocado or something.
Vegan.
Yeah, maybe it's a vegan bear or something. I mean, you're usually doing that. But how would you like to walk into a store and greet a 500 or 600 pound bear?
I think that'd be really cool.
Sampling the
But see, if he's eating, I don't think he'd bother anybody. So that'd be really cool to watch.
Yeah. Would you panic if you saw a bear in the store?
No. Me panic? I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh man.
Anyways.
On to some of the scary stuff, and we'll have Dr. Kelly Victory on at the bottom of the hour to fill us in on all the stuff, COVID and all this stuff. But there was a shooting up in Portland Saturday night. On
Joseph writes in, only if you had no mask.
Yeah, the bear wasn't. Yeah, bear hasn't obviously heard of COVID.
Good
That's a good
observation,
one.
Joseph.
Yes, good observation. Yeah, the bear was spreading the coronavirus.
He was.
On that, that's a good subject because there's some new studies out saying, and it's going to confirm a lot. I think a lot of things Kelly Victory said. But anyway,
Carla writes in that she would run from the bear. I don't know. I think that'd be really cool. Anyway, carry on.
Again, Saturday night there was a shooting of a Portland man who was supposedly a Trump supporter. There was a rally out there, pro-Trump rally, protesting or in support of Trump and against Mayor Wheeler and letting all the Antifa folks basically run the city and do that on that. But here's the suspect in the alleged shooting, or the alleged suspect that they're looking for. He says, I'm 100% Antifa. Alleged Portland shooter was previously arrested and released for bringing an illegal loaded gun to a riot. Andy No writes, a man being investigated by police in fatal shooting a Trump supporter in Portland identifies Antifa and is an ardent Black Lives Matter supporter. Michael Forrest Reinhold was previously arrested at an Antifa riot in July and charged with illegally possessing a loaded firearm and other crimes. He was let go and charges were never pursued. He allegedly went on to kill Aaron J. Danielson on Saturday night in downtown Portland. The Oregonian was first to report that Reinhold, 48, is being investigated by Portland police for the homicide, but has not been formally named or charged. In the early morning hours at a violent Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots outside of Mark Hatfield Courthouse, Reinhold was cited for possessing a loaded gun in a public place, resisting arrest, and interfering with police. He was photographed at the time fighting cops while on the ground. A gun laid on the ground next to him. He was cited, released, and spent no time in county jail. Like the majority of those arrested at riots, local prosecutors did not press charges. So you hear from the crowd that wants to eliminate you from having a gun all the time. Well, we have these laws and you shouldn't have a gun, and if you do this, if there was another law on the books, another life would be saved. Well, here was the law on the books. He was illegally, allegedly a month ago, at a rally, illegally possessing a gun, let go by the cops, was not pursued by prosecutors, and is the number one suspect in the murder Saturday night of that. Here's a picture of Aaron Danielson, who was the one who was killed Saturday night in that. Again, how many more laws do you need for if somebody's intending to kill somebody, they're going to do it?
Exactly.
I mean, this is the fallacy of, oh, it's the gun's fault, or we need another law, or da 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 da. That's it. That is not. No, that takes away your ability to protect you and your family, and as the Second Amendment of the Constitution and in the Federalist Papers and all the writings up to that, maybe even more importantly, to protect you from a tyrannical government that will not keep you safe, as in Portland and Kenosha, Wisconsin, and all that other stuff in Seattle and everywhere else this stuff has been going on. Thoughts?
No, I agree with you completely. I think if anybody wants to get a gun, whether there's laws or not, they're going to get one. If they want to kill you, they're going to kill you, whether they want to, no matter what, really. I agree with you. I don't get why people are all against. Why wouldn't you want a gun to protect yourself against all the evil people that are going to go and get that gun the wrong way? Right? I don't get it.
Here's what it was. And throw this picture up. This is from Andy No on his Twitter feed. He's doing a picture. The Trump Trump supporters were going down the street. This was earlier in the day. Antifa clashed with participants at a pro-Trump car caravan that drove into downtown Portland. Far left noters hurled projectiles at cars and their passengers and were hit with pepper spray in return. Later, a caravan participant was killed. I've said this, letting this stuff go and not stopping these rioters and looters and lawbreakers at the point of their doing it, this stuff is good. And then like in Portland, where this been going on for 3 months now?
Yeah.
They've been allowing this.
Wow.
It's getting it. You let this stuff go on, and then Wheeler over there trying to blame it on Trump or saying he did it, or it's his fault and all that, and they got in a Twitter back and forth war, and Trump said, you know what, you keep mouthing off. He said, we sent our National Guard troops in to protect our federal courthouse, but, they're going to push Trump to declare martial law in there or something and go in there because he's half said that, watch, if you don't take care of this, we will. And about the only way other than that going on the deal of that, the phone's ringing, of the deal, and coming in on that, and there you go. It's just going to get worse if you let guys like Wheeler and stuff let this stuff go. Each and every day, we're going to have we're going to have a uglier and uglier and uglier situation if we continue to let this stuff fester like this and escalate of that. It was not the Trump supporters that started this, according to the post by Andy No. The Antifa was hurling, objects and particles at the Trump supporters, so they were defending themselves. And then later on, it escalated to one person winding up dead.
Oh, because they wanted to support Trump?
Yes, because the Antifa ones were attacking those who were supporting Trump in Portland.
Carla writes in, but Trump is not stopping this, and he is our president, though.
Well, Carla, like I said, and you imagine what firestorm this is going to cause, other than like he did when they went and secured the federal courthouses and stuff, because they have authority to do that. There is no national police force or that. That's why Trump... Only way.
But imagine what would happen if Trump did go and try to stop it.
Yes, and basically the only way he could is to declare martial law and go in there, and then he would have the authority, I believe, my reading of the Constitution and probably many others, is about those are the two ways. he has the ability, because he's commander-in-chief and president of the United States, to defend federal property. And the second part, he can declare martial law if there is a situation that's getting out of control, emergency. Could be a hurricane, and a lawlessness is breaking out, or people are stealing stuff, and yada, yada, yada. In a state of emergency, he can declare martial law and do that. But especially in this environment, you imagine what that would cause. But
that's kind of what David said too. That if you send in police or troops to stop it, they would call him a dictator.
Yes, I mean, in this environment, and Trump. But I will say this: Trump's probably the guy that would pull the trigger if there were, And I mean, if you push him hard enough, or you keep pushing on him, or these things keep happening, he just might do it. I mean, and you talk about blank hitting the fan on that. There's going to be nothing. I mean, I think things will start getting real nasty in a big hurry if that happens.
Completely. That's why I'm really nervous for election season.
Yes.
Like, I'm really
yes.
nervous about it.
I don't think election season, and again, like I said in the over the week, or on Friday, I think, that I'm really concerned, especially if this is a close election, and especially if Trump wins. Man, this thing is, if we have a Bush versus Gore like 2000, where it came down to 535 votes in Florida, who determined the president of the United States, Katie barred the door. Because this is why I say we got one more clip I want to get in. This is Trump Saturday at a New Hampshire rally. And this is why I say I wouldn't put it past Trump to go ahead and declare martial law. But this is what he said in New Hampshire on Saturday.
But they're not going to get there. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to let our country be destroyed by a bunch of nut jobs.
I mean, that's vintage Trump of saying it, how, like I say, he talks like we do when we're talking at the bar, talking with each other over dinner or lunch, or conversation at the grocery store or whatever. I mean, but that was those kind of things, and what he has done, all the monikers he's done on the presidency, and, the decisions he's made and stuff like that. It would not surprise me if he just up and did it. If things get too much more out of hand, especially in Portland, he just might do it.
I think he will.
And that's going to be, man. You think the guys like this, that cat that is the suspect in the murder, going back on this, wrong one of that, if I can find it. You think that's bad? You think what's been going on bad that now? If that happens, I think, man, we're really going to be in for a fun ride. Going back and forth.
You think there'll be more riots?
Oh yeah, that's what I say. I mean, what was it? I think in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where they, I think of the 170, I think it was 174 were arrested during the riots, and like over 100 of them, it was way over half, that did not live in the city. So they're all a majority of it seems like. And it's been alleged, we've even run some of the clips of where it seems like there's a organized deal that's sending people to these hot spots. Whether it's Kenosha, Wisconsin, Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis, or wherever, New York City, where it was really breaking out hard. Even the riots in LA and stuff. People were tweeting they were flying out from Florida and stuff when the protests were going on in L.A., yes, in San Francisco.
Stephen writes in, if he wins again, I suspect that he will be squashing violent protests right away. And Carla writes in, I see it more if Biden wins. More people are protesting Biden wins than Trump.
I wouldn't see that because...
I see Trump's
I don't know if they're protesting. It could be reversed.
Are Trump supporters violent? I've never seen like a Trump supporter.
No, they're the ones
thing go
accused
crazy.
of. That's what we're showing. It's
But-
the Antifa crowd, the
Right.
ones that are
That's why I'm like
the
I
ones
don't-
that are throwing the rocks, looting, pillaging, doing all these others. It's always these inner cities, very democratic areas. Antifa, which we had the Black Lives Matter, which according to their organizers is a Marxist organization of all this stuff. And yeah, I'm increasingly concerned across all of this stuff for doing that because yeah, I see that's where the violence is coming from. It's perceived that us Stetson hat wearing Trump supporters are the ones the big ugly hillbillies that are causing all this stuff, but we're not. The Trump protesters were peaceful. They're not protesters, supporters were peaceful. It's the Antifa protesters that were hurling stuff at them and wanted to start a confrontation. Or if they didn't want to start a confrontation, I don't know what the reason was for throwing stuff at them.
Hey guys, 1 minute.
Hi, Sean.
1 minute. Hey Stephanie.
Aw. Brian's my day every day.
There you go. So I'm glad you got a smile on your
I
face.
do, finally. It only took a half hour, 45 minutes being here.
As opposed to me, which puts a frown on your face.
Well, duh. Even David writes in, hey, Sean, and he does our countdown for us every once in a while, too. David's catching on.
Of that, yes. He keeps us in shape. Have the jingle palette.
He does.
Speaking of count.
30
I
seconds.
knew that. I thought it was your job. Do I have to do everything around here?
Wow.
Yes. That's why I run so smooth.
Really?
Okay. No. Which one do I need to hit? Yeah. Okay.
You're
Got
on
it.
it. Gonna have to
All right,
sharpen up
guys,
on the
here we
power of
go.
glasses.
And download your free phone app today.
IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station.
There's that funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday on the Mighty Met, 1490 KMET. On that, as we join in on a Magnificent Monday. On that, told a little story, and you see me wearing the very expensive Stetson hat that my grandfather wore. I think only wore one time. I think of that at the 64 when we used to have the 4th of July parade down Sunny Mead Boulevard and Sunny Mead Boulevard, and I was like 3 years old at the time, and I wanted the hat. So my grandfather gave it to my dad, and he just recently gave it to me. So I thought I'd roll out the Stetson hat. Kind of
Very
just,
fancy.
yes.
And I feel like kind of like left out that I don't have a cowboy hat or a cowgirl hat.
Well, you want one?
Yes.
I got several of them.
But you got boy ones. I need a girl one. I want one of those hats that are like this. They're like the same thing. They're really trendy right now, but it's round. It's not a cowboy hat, though. It's just a regular hat.
But no, I got it, some 50-odd years later, so, be patient. Good things will happen. Right? You could agree with me once.
No, not after the day I've had today. No.
That we outlined a little bit of the Antifa, the murder suspect who was that they're looking for in the murder of the Trump supporter up there in Portland, and the warfare going back between the mayor and Trump. Trump says if you don't straighten this out, we may be coming in. It's liable to get more ugly. The Trump supporters, there's no evidence that the Trump supporters did anything to provoke anybody. The Antifa supporters were throwing objects, doing that, and then it culminated in the shooting of that going back and forth on Saturday night. And like I said, if they don't stomp this stuff out, and especially if you don't stomp any of this organized lawlessness right when it starts, it's just going to escalate. And then it's going to be that much more difficult and that much more ugly when the time comes that you have to stop it. Or we're all going to be under, anarchy on this thing going back and forth. So I mean, we all got to choose, and it's all happening in most cases in very democratic left-wing places going back and forth. So when we do this on the on that, it's not something that we're gonna solve very easily now. That the Antifa protester crowd, rabble rousers, anarchists have now got a foothold in this thing, and it seems to be escalating. But the other main topic that we've been living under this dark cloud of,
Does it never end?
yes, of that going on about 6 months now,
Oh my
and we
God.
really don't see no end in sight on it, which is very unfortunate on that. But to fill us in on that is our number one expert on all things coronavirus that we have on at least once a week. We have Dr. Kelly Victory. You're on IE Newswire with Stephanie and Roy.
Hey guys, good to be back with you. Although I wish there would be a Monday where I'd come on and say, "Wow, it's over." Let's all do the happy dance. But two interesting pieces of news on the coronavirus front. Number one was obviously Gavin Newsom's just dreadful double down or triple down, wherever I've lost track at this point, with regard to his supposedly simplified reopening plan from last week. And it's interesting because I had some opportunity to look at it more carefully over the weekend and to really think about it. And one of the things that's frightening about that new color-coded thing, as you know, it goes from purple to red to orange to yellow with all sorts of ridiculous parameters around it based, again, solely on quote-unquote cases of coronavirus versus anything that's clinically significant. But one of the frightening things is that you'll notice there's no green.
Yes.
There's no green.
And he stated there was not going to be a green in that press conference, which, I almost blew my stack.
Exactly. So there is no place that you could get to. The yellow level, which is the, minimally risky or whatever it is, and is less than one new case per 100,000 people, which would imply that Gavin Newsom believes we are going to eradicate coronavirus, which would be interesting since the last virus we eradicated was smallpox. So he's really setting his sights kind of high to think that we're going to eradicate COVID-19. But that yellow level is the best you can get, and even with that, he says that most quote unquote businesses will be reopened. So I find it really problematic from a public health perspective and a business perspective, just a leadership perspective, to not give people what is it that you need to shoot for so that all of us, not most of us, all of us can get back to business. All of us can get back to our normal lives, and we can reopen the entire economy and get back to business as usual. And he has left that out entirely. That's frightening.
Yes, it is on that. One note, and then there's a study that came out in the New York Times on that. But the one thing I wanted to get your opinion on going forward on this thing is, and we've got it up on there, this is the quote, "I don't agree with the new CDC guidance, period. Full stop. It's not policy of the state of California. We're not influenced by those who are experts in the field who feel very differently." So Gavin Newsom has been saying, I want to listen to the experts. When the CDC comes out with their recommendations on testing and everything, he says, well, because I don't agree with them, we're just going to throw those experts out the door.
Right. Well, and I am not a conspiracy theorist, but I will tell you, I wonder if the reason he doesn't agree, quote unquote, with the CDC's, finally came out with guidelines that were somewhat reasonable, stating, first of all, that if you don't have symptoms, you shouldn't get tested. If you test positive, you don't need to be retested. So finally, 6.5 months into this debacle, the CDC came out with some reasonable guidelines. Unfortunately, Gavin Newsom had already signed a contract with a company that makes testing equipment and has already committed billions of dollars of taxpayer money to this company. And I think, frankly, he's afraid he's going to have egg on his face if he doesn't find a market for all of those tests. And the easiest way to make sure that all of those tests are, quote unquote, necessary is if you say, oh, CDC be damned, we're not following your silly old new guidelines. We're going to, go with what we were doing before, which is testing hand over fist, including millions of people who have no symptoms, and then asking people to be retested over and over again. That's the way to use up those tests.
Ah.
And that's what...
That's scary.
Yes, and this is what the next thing I want to get to you on that is, this was published, of all places, the New York Times, on that. It's... they're quoting Dr. Michael Minya, an epidemiologist of Harvard T.H. Chan Public Health, referring to the CDC, the aforementioned CDC recommendation. He says, in fact, we should be ramping up testing of all different people, he said, but we have to do it through a whole different mechanisms. In what may be a step in that direction, the Trump administration announced on Thursday it would purchase 150,000 rapid tests. The most widely used diagnostic test for the new coronavirus, called a PCR test, provides simple yes or no question to whether the patient is infected. But similar PCR tests and other viruses do offer a sense of how contagious or infected the patient might be. We've been using one type of data for everything. It's just plus or minus. That's all Dr. Mina said. We are using that for clinical diagnostics, for public health, and for public policy decision. But yes and no is not good enough, he added. It's the amount of virus that should dictate the infected patient's next steps. It's really irresponsible, I think, to forego recognition of this quantitative issue. And he goes on to talk about cycles, and his basic part of it was, you may test positive for coronavirus in one of their tests, but they're using a threshold that if you test positive, and 80 to 90% of the people in Massachusetts that tested positive would not spread this stuff. So
precisely, and this is where the issue is, as I've said from the beginning, that quote-unquote asymptomatic people are very, very unlikely to spread this virus. Because just because you test positive, that PCR test picks up fragments of the virus, and it specifically amplifies any of the genetic material from the virus that it finds. So it may show up as a, quote, positive test, but it might not be picking up virus that's clinically meaningful, meaning that isn't a viral particle that can replicate, that can cause disease in the person whose nose it's in, let alone in somebody else. So it's picking up genetic material, and it amplifies it so that it can, test whether it's yay or nay, but it isn't meaningful. And I've said this from the start. It's a meaningless parameter to test positive cases, because most of them, by far, 80+% of them, are not showing signs or symptoms themselves, and they can't pass it on because the virus particles that are being picked up aren't capable of causing disease. It's remnants, if you will.
And that's what, when I was reading this, I'm thinking, this is exactly what Dr. Kelly has been saying. Your thoughts, Stephanie?
Well, I want to read out Stephen's comment. You might have already answered it. Should there be a mandatory test for everyone, just to show who's had it without symptoms or deaths and who has had the antibodies?
Well, I
That's
don't
a good
think
idea.
so, because the problem is we don't know. There's no way to differentiate right now between somebody with the test, between somebody who has meaningful, meaning viable virus, a virus the test is positive because they actually have live virus that is capable of replicating and causing disease in themselves or the person sitting next to them, from somebody who had it, 4 months ago, and has a viral particle left that's absolutely meaningless. Furthermore, the antibody tests are really inaccurate. They may or may not be positive even if you had COVID, because many people can fight off COVID-19 without even developing antibodies. The first line of defense is the T cells, and many people, particularly children, it appears, are able just to knock the virus out with T cells, not even needing to form antibodies. So we really need to do what we've done for every other virus prior to this. We've never randomly tested people for influenza. We never randomly tested people for mumps or measles or chickenpox. We don't randomly test people for these things. We wait until people have signs or symptoms, and then we say, oh, are those signs and symptoms because you have influenza? We do the test and we prove that that's it, because there are some drugs, Tamiflu, for example, for influenza, that work to limit the number of days you're ill. We have the same thing with COVID-19 with hydroxychloroquine and other things. So what we need to do is stop randomly testing people who are asymptomatic. So finally, the CDC came out and said that last Monday, but Gavin Newsom doubled down. The other really important piece of information that came out, and it came out on Friday from the CDC, I think that was somewhat purposeful because it wouldn't get a lot of play. The CDC finally acknowledged on Friday what Dr. Kelly has been saying from the beginning, which is that only 6% total of all of the patients who they've said have died from COVID, only 6% did not have comorbidities. And of the people of the 94% who had comorbidities, those other illnesses, on average they had 2.6 comorbidities, meaning they had diabetes and heart disease and asthma, or they had, obesity and heart disease and were on some medication that was immunosuppressive. So by far, 94% of the people who they have listed as COVID-19 deaths have had serious illness with multiple other conditions.
Further quoting from the New York Times article, any test with a cycle threshold above 35 is too sensitive, agreed Juliet Morrison, a virologist at the University of California, Riverside. Does that place sound familiar to you listeners? I am shocked that people would think that 40 could be a representative positive, she said. A more reasonable cutoff would be 30 to 35, she added. Dr. Mina said he would set the figure at 30 or less. I think why... And this is what Trump said. The CDC came out with the recommendations. Trump said we don't need to be doing all this stuff. It's ridiculous. And Governor Hairgel up there is saying, I don't care about that. We're further testing. We're going to even ramp up testing even more. And like you say, you're never going to get away from this. As he said, you're never going to be in the green.
Right. And so if you really look at where we are going in California and in places who are treating the testing issue the way that they are, it's very clear, and I hate to say that because it's just September 1, there is no chance that California will open up for business before January of 2021, and likely not until well into 2021, which really I believe is going to be unrecoverable for an awful lot of businesses. When we are talking about testing asymptomatic college students and shutting down universities and sending people home and quarantining young healthy people this far into it, when for God's sake if no one has learned anything, we do not do this is not the way to practice public health. The mandate is to isolate the few to protect the many, not isolate the many to protect the few. I've said it over and over again. And instead of learning from that, their plan is to let's keep testing. Let's keep doing a bunch of random tests for stuff. Why don't we start randomly testing for other things too? Who knows? Maybe we're having a pandemic of all kinds of things that we didn't know about, and we can freak out about that as well. I mean, if we're going to freak out, let's have it. Let's really freak out. Find out that we're actually in the middle of a pandemic of I don't know, maybe measles. Nobody knew because nobody's sick with measles, but might as well start testing for it.
And West Nile. I mean, we need to stay away from mosquitoes now.
There you go. I mean, I'm being facetious, obviously. I think this is absolutely patently absurd. I have never seen this in my entire clinical career, this kind of silliness. I see patients face to face, all day long. And honestly, the only reason I ever don a mask at all is because many patients are in that high risk category, that one of those high risk categories. A lot of the patients are obese or have diabetes and heart disease, and they feel more comfortable not only wearing a mask themselves, but want me to wear a mask. So I will always comply with that if it makes a patient feel more comfortable. But the idea that healthy people are walking down the street, riding their bicycles, going to the gym wearing masks is patently absurd, and you really need to start asking why this is happening. Likewise, you need to ask why Gavin Newsom or others are now deciding that they're going to ignore solid CDC guidelines with regard to testing. And unfortunately, I believe it is tied to the amount of money that was spent on contracts with companies that provide testing equipment.
It is, and it's sad that we're doing this. And I mean, not only that, okay, the CDC came out with these guidelines of what's coming on, and I got to believe Dr. Scott Atlas had a lot to do with this. But along with that, you have Dr. Minna of Harvard, T.H. Chan Medical School. You have a virologist from University of California at Riverside, and more that were listed in the New York Times article. And Dr. Kelly Victory has been shouting this from the hilltops for 6 months.
Precisely, and I think that this is something where, unfortunately, I believe until people start really pushing back, and I think there are quite a few lawsuits going on around the country, many in the state of California, incidentally, against Gavin Newsom personally and against his administration with regard to locking down businesses, the continued school closures, and also the prohibition against people attending church in person. I think those are going on in California. They're going on in Michigan and in other states where people are suing the government and saying, you have no jurisdiction to do this at this point in the quote-unquote pandemic. Truly, this does not even reach pandemic category or guidelines right now from the CDC or the WHO or anybody else. It was one thing, 1, 2, 3 weeks into this back in February and March, where there was some question about just how bad it was going to get, how far it would spread, and whether or not hospital systems in particular would be overrun. But let's face it, it's been months now that we've known precisely who the at-risk people are. We know that children are essentially at zero risk. We know that asymptomatic people and children in general do not spread the virus. Can they? Yes, they can. But even Dr. Fauci acknowledged back in March, in a clip I'm sure he'd like to deep six, even he acknowledged the truth, which is that asymptomatic people simply do not spread respiratory viruses. They are capable of it, but they certainly are not the drivers in a pandemic. And that is why we in the past, in every previous respiratory viral or infection outbreak, it's why we don't quarantine healthy people and asymptomatic people and test willy-nilly. The reason we are doing with COVID-19 is probably multifactorial and certainly largely political at this point, because it's been a very, very useful tool for this political season.
You just reminded me of something, and I kind of slipped my mind, but the California Supreme Court, of all places, ordered Newsom on Friday and then extended it to Saturday, his justification for closing down the schools in one of the lawsuits that was filed. And I wonder if that's why Hair Gel didn't have a press conference today, because I just did a quick scan of it, and I'm not seeing anything coming up, because they gave him they extended the deadline to last Saturday for him to reply to that, and then there has been nothing.
Yes, and I am an expert witness in that specific case. We are waiting for his response so that we can then file our response back. Because that, I believe, is the only thing that is going to change the tide with this. Again, I don't have a political dog in this fight. What I am fighting for is what is right from a public health perspective. And again, the mandate of public health, which is to consider the impact of any particular mitigation scheme, whether it's wearing of masks or social distancing, shutting schools, putting a moratorium on elective surgeries, whatever thing you choose to do from a public health perspective, you must consider the impact on the entire population, not simply that population that may or may not ever become infected with COVID-19. And at this point, we have seen that the COVID lateral damage, the fallout, the deleterious effects and impacts on the lives of tens of millions of Americans has been far, far greater than the impact of the virus itself. Many more people have died from the response to this virus than from COVID-19.
Dr. Kelly Victory, thank you very much for being on and informing our listeners of really what they should be looking at and hopefully what to prepare for. And because with the way Newsom's going, especially in California, I don't know when this assault is going in, but thank you very much for everything you do for us on that. I know we all really appreciate it.
We really do. Thank you, Dr. Kelly.
As always, we'll talk soon. Stay well.
You got
Bye.
it. Thanks.
I love her. She always
Yes.
delivers the message so clear and
Which is
better than you.
astounding how somebody like Gavin Newsom can get elected governor, not only ignoring Kelly Victory, but they've all said, how many times have we heard we got to follow the science and the experts and da-da-da-da-da-da. Now here are some of the top experts in the world commenting on this, and no, we don't. That isn't what I want or what I want to do. So out with that. We're not listening to that. We didn't hear that. How do you deal with that?
Stephen writes in, there is a city here in San Diego that is spending $12.4 million to redo all their fresh air intakes and filtration system. It's ridiculous. That's crazy. It's air. Doesn't like trees and all that kind of. We need to let the world do what it's meant to do.
Well, I would be all for going outside and doing everything myself, but
even he's saying that's ridiculous. I mean, I think that everyone's just panicking about everything.
The plastic shields in front of the grocery checker things and
that
all
I think's kind of cool though. A sneeze guard.
No, the whole thing. It's made to desensitize you from.
It's a bit much.
Yes, that's what it's all about. Because they can't control you.
But that's just for the schools that they're spending that much money to redo the air.
You
system.
could, just in one school I can imagine. I would just like to, if you got it in there, put it in the comments about what the average per school would that cost. What they're doing right now on that. If you got a ballpark figure on what it would cost per school to retrofit them as you're doing right now, I think that would be very interesting, because that's coming. Of that, you can almost bet dimes to a donuts on that. It's always on the. It's always on the outro. It's always on the. It's always interesting. It's always a jam-packed show coming in on Monday, because you get the weekend on that. Again, we want to thank Dr. Kelly Victory for shedding the truth and light on this stuff. Because if it wasn't for voices like that, I'd have probably went crazy a long time ago.
Yeah.
On that. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then,
we're gone.